The discovery of the Dragonborn was very quickly noticed by the Greybeards, an order of philosopher monks who live in isolation at the peak of Skyrim's largest mountain, a mountain called the Throat of the World. As the Dragonborn found his way back to Whiterun, having defeated Mirmolnir, the entirety of Skyrim heard what sounded like the roar of a volcano, but what was actually the very words of these monks uttering the welcoming of a new Dragonborn into our midst. You see, the power of their voice is so vast that their mere shout could be heard miles and miles away all around the province. Upon reaching Jarl Balgruuf with news of the success of the expedition, the Dragonborn explained what happened, what he felt, what he did, and what the others called him. A Dragonborn. Of course, this means, well, quite a lot to Nords. The legend of the Dragonborn is well known. In fact, Talos himself was a Dragonborn. The calling of the Greybeards was also well known to the Jarl, and he explained that this only meant one thing.
If you really are Dragonborn, they can teach you how to use your gift.
Didn't you hear the thundering sound as you returned to Whiterun? That was the voice of the Greybeards, summoning you to High Hrothgar. This hasn't happened in centuries, at least. Not since Tiber Septim himself was summoned when he was still Talos of Atmora.
Hrongar, calm yourself. What does any of this Nord nonsense have to do with our friend here? Capable as he may be, I don't see any signs of him being this, Dragonborn.
Nord nonsense? Why, you puffed up ignorant. These are our sacred traditions that go back to the founding of the First Empire.
Hrongar, don't be so hard on Avenici.
I meant no disrespect, of course. It's just that, what do these Greybeards want with him?
That's the Greybeards' business, not ours. Whatever happened when you killed that dragon, it revealed something in you, and the Greybeards heard it. If they think you're Dragonborn, who are we to argue? You'd better get up to High Hrothgar immediately. There's no refusing the summons of the Greybeards.
The Dragonborn had to make a pilgrimage all the way into the very top of the Throat of the World in order to meet these monks and train under them. In fact, it was considered quite a privilege to make the journey into the mountain. For you to understand that, of course, we're gonna have to need a little bit of context. The breath and the voice are the vital essence of a Nord. When they defeat great enemies, they take their tongues as trophies. See, the power of a Nord can be articulated into a dragon shout, and the strongest of these warriors are called tongues. When the Nords attack a city, see, they don't take any siege engines or cavalry. The tongues literally just form in a wedge in front of the gatehouse and draw in their breath. When the leader lets it out in a shout, the doors are blown in, and then the axemen rush into the city. These shouts can be used to sharpen blades or strike enemies. A common effect would be the one that knocks enemies back, or maybe even the power to command a person to do whatever you wish. A strong Nord can instill bravery in men with his battle cry, or stop a charging warrior with a roar. The greatest of the Nords can call to specific people over hundreds of miles, and can move by casting a shout, appearing where the shout lands. The most powerful Nords cannot speak without causing just utter chaos. They must go gagged and communicate through sign language or through scribing runes. The further north you go into Skyrim, the more powerful and elemental the people become, and the less they require dwellings and shelters. Wind is fundamental to Skyrim and the Nords. Those that live in the far wastes always carry a wind with them, is what people say. Nords consider themselves to be children of the sky. That's why this place is called Skyrim. They call the mountain the Throat of the World because it is where the sky exhaled the north winds onto the land and formed them. They literally believe this is where the gods created the world and life. It all happened via a massive breath made by the goddess Kinnereth. what is known as the goddess of nature, winds, heaven, and sometimes life. That's why Kynareth is so important to the Nords. She is the goddess of the air, of the sky, and this is where life started, at least according to them. What I'm trying to say here is that this place has strong significance to the Nords, and the people that live up there, the Greybeards, the monks, they are tongues. They can shout things into existence. They can do all those things I just mentioned and more. Ulfric Stormcloak is actually a tongue as well, which is why he was gagged during his failed execution. Now, typically, training in the arts of the tongue is a process that takes decades, if not your entire life, in order to master. However, not for the Dragonborn. See, these shouts are actually dragon words. When a dragon breathes fire upon you, he's not doing it thanks to some gland on his throat that produces that fire. What he's doing instead is actually speaking to you. He's speaking the dragon word for fire, and by doing that, fire magically gets created and projected towards you from its mouth. When dragons fight each other, they're actually talking to one another. Debates between one of these dragons are battles as well. However, it's not just about learning what the word of power is. You don't just learn what the word for icy blizzard is in dragon language and then you can just cast it like that. No. The main problem here, and the reason it typically takes decades to learn a single word of power, is because you must understand what the word means first. Think for a second. What does water mean to you? Of course, probably the first thing you thought was the ocean or maybe the kitchen faucet at your home. Maybe a glass of water? But let's be a little bit more introspective here though. What does water really mean? It's in everything. It really is everything. You are literally mostly water. The world is actually mostly water. But that's not the point. You can rationalize what it means to you as a human, but what makes it so difficult is that you have to understand it like a dragon understands it. Maybe to a dragon, water means weakness. See, that's where the power comes from. That's why it takes so long to master. Someone can't just tell you how to think about water and have it work just like that. You literally have to change the way your brain interprets its concepts. Mold your brain into thinking like a dragon. And that's why it is so easy for the Dragonborn to learn these shouts, because his brain is already a dragon's brain. You are already a dragon inside of you. Of course, these were all things that the Greybeards went on to teach the Dragonborn. The power of the voice and how to learn the words. The Dragonborn had learned that he alone had the ability to absorb the souls of dragons, and with it, their understanding of their language, a factor that he could use to project their powerful shouts. However, the Greybeards are a very special kind of tongue. They are actually extreme pacifists. See, they practice what they call the way of the voice, which is quite simply the art of using these shouts only for the worship of the gods, and never for combat. This is the main reason why the Greybeards don't actually really teach people how to use these shouts, for this kind of power typically lends itself to be used in combat. The Dragonborn, however, is a special case, for the appearance of a Dragonborn is ominous, and, well, to put it bluntly, it's kind of a big deal. The last Dragonborn before this one, after all, ended up uniting the world, produced world peace, and literally became a god, so you know, kind of a big deal. The Dragonborn ended up learning quite a bit about his powers during this meetup with the Greybeards. However, his training was not yet complete. He needed to complete a task using everything that he had learned, the task being to go into an ancient burial tomb called Ustengrav, where the body of Jurgen Windcaller was interned. See, Jurgen Windcaller was the creator of the Greybeards, known at the time as the strongest tongue in the world. The quest was simple: to go into the tomb, collect an artifact of his, a special horn, and deliver it back to the Greybeards, and then they would allow him to finish his training. But things are never that simple. At the very end, finally, when the Dragonborn was supposed to find the artifact, there was instead a letter. It had seemed that someone had taken the horn and instead planted a note for the Dragonborn to read. Someone calling themselves a friend. Whoever it was knew that the Dragonborn was to come here. But alas, he needed that artifact, and as such he followed the directions of the note in order to see who this mysterious person was. The directions took our Dragonborn back into the very start of things, back to Riverwood. It had seemed that the tavern wench of the Sleeping Giant Inn was actually more than just that. Her name was Delphine, and she seemed to know quite a lot about Oz, and what was happening with the world around us. The dragons, the Dragon War, everything. The big thing was, though, that she didn't seem to think that dragons were simply coming back. She seemed to believe the dragons were coming back to life. Of course, we knew that the Master of Dragons potentially had the ability to do that, to resurrect others, but it seemed now to be written in stone. In fact, quite literally. The stone we had previously found in Bleak Falls Barrow was indeed a map of dragon burials, and with that, Delphine had managed to track down a pattern of resurrections by visiting these mounts. Indeed, Delphine was that stranger back then talking with Farengar. Farengar had given her the stone, and with it, she discovered that whoever was resurrecting these dragons was doing such starting from the south of Skyrim and going counterclockwise all the way into the north. And if that pattern held, the next dragon burial mound would be found in a tiny place called Kynes Grove, and if we hurried, we could potentially find out who or what was doing these resurrections. There was most definitely more to the story than just this, for Delphine knew way too much to be a simple warrior with a grudge. She had hatred for the Thalmor that was beyond reasoning, and she seemed very highly trained, but she didn't trust the Dragonborn, at least not until he proved that he was indeed one, by absorbing the soul of the resurrected dragon that they were about to meet. The only thing she did say was that she came from an organization that had been looking for a Dragonborn for a very, very long time. Very curious. Seeking answers, the Dragonborn set out with Delphine to corner this entity and find out the truth about the comings of dragons in this age. But he would never believe what he would find there.
Salokunir, Zil Gro Dova Ursa.
Steady. I don't know what's happening. Let's watch and wait. This is worse than I thought.
Alduin Thuri, Boantid Vokri Hasrixejun Kuzig. Ger Salokunir, Kalimir. Folosai Dovakin, Zuu, Korav Nid Nol Dove to high. You do not even know our tongue, do you? Such arrogance, to dare take for yourself the name of Dova. Salokunir, Kridar Jur.
If you would like to watch the full 2-hour video, then be sure to head on over to patreon.com/MrRhexx, where the video is available to all patrons. Otherwise, stay tuned as we will continue to upload the rest throughout the next couple of weeks every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Lastly, I would like to thank Dylan Baker, Toby Oliver, and Alex Fitchie for supporting me on Patreon and allowing this to happen. Thank you very much.